So with that having said, I would like to begin with some questions, and then after we answer some of the questions, I will bring Dr. LeRoy in as well. Thank you so much, Andrée. Great to see you here. So, Catherine, you're going to ask the questions that have already been sent to us.
Yes. Thank you guys for coming online tonight. And if you have questions for Mynoo, please send them to me. You can text them to me or email them. And we have quite a few very interesting questions. So I'll start with one from the East Coast. And it says, I hear the media talk about the new malaria cure-for-all drug that could be harmful. I think they're speaking about the malaria drug. The one that Trump got from India. How do you discriminate between fact and not fact? What is your source, Mynoo? Which scientists do you listen to, or do you go to fact finder? A practical-minded person here.
Yes. So, Catherine, when we talk to Andrée, then I will ask her as well, because she's actually used this medication. But I'm going to answer this question very specifically, which is, which scientists do I listen to? Where do I go to find the facts? So, what I'm saying here is, so for me, I mean, I do track what's going on in the third dimension reality. I do track that. Gaurav is a part of a scientific group, so he tracks what the scientists are talking. All of that happens. The most important barometer for you at this time, for everyone right now at this time, is just go to yourself. Your body will tell you. Your body is the best indicator always. It has always been. And at this time, there's so much of the clutter is taken out that your body will give you the answer, whether you go for this or you don't go for this. So, is this a drug that is actually helping people? Well, there's lots of people that have used it, and it is being used, and it has helped them. Now, whether it is the right one for you is up to you to make that choice and decision for yourself. If you don't feel right about it, don't take it. The vibrational, it has always been about vibrations, but the vibrational quality and the impact of vibration of anything that we ingest, matches whatever vibration we attribute to it. Like sometimes, a cheese sandwich tastes absolutely divine made by someone. Other times it's like flat. Well, what's the difference? It's the vibration with which it was created. And the same thing applies to medication also. Yes, there is a chemical combination that is there. So that's how I would choose to answer that question. I know we are going to do a proper introduction to Dr. LeRoy. Do you want to do that intro right now? And then let's get Andrée also to respond to this. It's timely.
Sure. I think that's perfect. It's so interesting. The world is such a small place, and I really believe that we're experiencing this one degree of separation. And speaking of Dr. LeRoy, one of her questions to Mynoo was, am I doing enough? Am I making a difference? And I just want to say, this might be a surprise to you, Dr. LeRoy, but I have a Pilates client who is in a whole nother world from where you are. I know you from USM. I know this woman from Pilates. And her name is Kathy. She's on the call tonight. Hopefully she got in. And she actually recognized you from last week when we were on the call. She immediately called me and said, oh my goodness, and I'm going to read this to you. I saw Dr. LeRoy. She made such a difference in my life and in my husband's life. I met her at the California Rehabilitation Center as she was my husband's doctor after suffering from a traumatic brain injury. It was the first week he was there. And I can't express how amazingly caring and interested Dr. LeRoy was in helping my husband relieve not only the pain in his shoulder, but she went above and beyond caring for him to get better while he was still quite delusional and disoriented. To sum it up, I felt like her kindness and interest was there all the way. And I really wished I could have seen more of her as she raised my vibrational energy through her beautiful spirit. She may not remember me, but even my friends that met her as I was sitting in the lobby one day came over to say, I would love to be friends with her. And I think that just speaks volumes about my friend and Dr. Andrée LeRoy, and I'd love to bring her on. We'll unmute you so you can answer some of the questions that are being asked from a medical perspective. Thank you for joining us again today, and I think you are on.
So Andrée, just share, and I know I shared a recording of our conversation with people. Not everybody may have heard it, and if you haven't heard it, then let us know. We will send you the recording. It goes through the full journey. Could you share briefly, Andrée, about your experience of having got the infection and how you came out of it? And I think in your journey of coming out of it, you will address this very specific question about this.
Sure. My name's Dr. Andrée LeRoy. I am a medical doctor and a medical intuitive. I have training in rehabilitation medicine, functional medicine, and I support people in their healing process to optimize their health. I have started my own practice and have been covering at local hospitals here in California. In the process of covering at one of those hospitals, I contracted coronavirus. And I do believe that the circumstances surrounding it are really telling to where I was in my consciousness, and also some of the points that were mentioned earlier today, these two key points about the pathways, one being trust and the other being the unconditional acceptance of what is. So I was covering at one of these hospitals. It seemed to be somewhat of a tense time in that, it was prior to when the quarantine had started, but there was a lot of buzz about that being initiated. We had a word of cases that were at other hospitals, but we were assured we don't think that this is something that's here. At the time, I got a surgical mask, which I was wearing. We had a memo that went around that suggested that it may increase some anxiety of patients if we were to wear these masks. And I think that's where some of the conflict came in that, the science that as I understood it, and my own inner knowing, really deeply felt the need for protection. And there was limited supply, as we've heard. And on March 20th, so I had started covering March 6th, I was to cover for a week, but another physician just opted to self-quarantine after travel. So they asked me to extend. And ironically, I had just given a talk on a panel about releasing fear and anxiety around COVID-19 on the 19th. And on the 20th, I developed first a tickle in my throat, followed by muscle aches, fatigue. And I kind of shook it off oh yeah, I've been working a lot. Maybe that's just what it is. But the following Saturday, when I woke up with a fever, rapid heart rate, and severe body aches, I knew that there was something going on. So it took me a long time to navigate the route of getting tested. As a matter of fact, that day I was so fatigued and weakened, I did not physically feel capable of leaving the house to get testing. And I am a single mom of a 5-year-old. She just turned 5. And that was a pretty significant factor in all of these decisions. But mainly fears around if I took her to a hospital, would she then contract this? How can I prevent her from getting what I have, etc.? And so really the journey and has really been a test and of my faith. And now I am coming to a place, it's been a process and a journey for me, but I am coming to a place of really just a lot of appreciation of having this happen. Because it shifted my trajectory. And it shifted my perspective, because I think a lot of my decisions around choosing to cover and choosing to, not wear the mask or wear a torn mask or, all of that had to do with a lack of trust of myself in this process. And also not being really real as to what is, like the whole experience that I was surrounded by.
And Andrée, you chose to heal yourself, stay at home with your 5-year-old, because otherwise she would have had to go on a separate quarantine. What medication did you use? Do you have anything you want to shed?
Yes, absolutely. Because I think that's a key, it's a key point and question, because there is so much conflicting information that's out there. And so I'd like to speak to it from an intuitive and from a medical perspective. I have worked in global health for many years. I worked 6 years in Haiti after the earthquake. I am very familiar with hydroxychloroquine as use for preventing malaria. I'm also very familiar with some of the newer antiviral medications that were indicated. Given my age, there is risk of heart complications where it slows down the interval, the electrical movement across the heart. And we see this it's called a prolonged QT in elderly people. However, it's been widely used across the world for many years. And for me, it was a comfort choice, but it was also an inner choice, because I was committed to healing at home in lieu of having to go into the hospital. And so for me, it became very clear at that time that it was the route to pursue. And then from an intuitive perspective, I do feel like at times, if you were to read all the side effects, the black labels that are on medications, yes, there is a risk benefit to a lot of these. And if it had been my choice, I would have pursued a natural route or not even contracted this at all. But I had to accept what was. I had to accept the fact that my oxygen was dropping at that time. And I was encouraged to go into the hospital. And this was the last effort to try to turn the tide on that situation. And so I was able to change my perception of the medicine from one of, oh, this could give me all these problems and lingering issues later in life, to I am present to this. This is something that could offer me some support and assistance. And in choosing to see the medicine that way, I believe that it helped me. So within 6 hours of taking the medicine, my oxygen level went from 92%. At 90 to 92% is when they are recommending you enter in the hospital, because your oxygen is low enough that you could go into significant respiratory distress. And I had a little finger monitor at home that I was checking. And so within 6 hours of my first dose of taking the medicine, and I did send light to the medicine, but in 6 hours of taking it, my oxygen had turned around to about 96%. And I do feel as though in taking it, it was instrumental in my process, not saying it will be the same for everyone, but in my process to remain at home and not have to go in the hospital and be separated from my child.
Thank you, Andrée. Thank you so much. Catherine, over to you for the other questions. Thank you.
We have quite a few more, some of which we are going to actually do recordings of. We're going to bring the guest on who asked the question, and we're going to offer recordings because they're quite in depth. So I want to ask one that actually Andrée may be able to also shed some light on, but is it possible once you get corona to get it again? And is this in any way a life lesson when you contract corona? So part of that for you, Mynoo, and maybe part of it about do you get it again? Can you contract it again?
So I'm just going to invite the medical perspective from you, Andrée, and I can talk about what Spirit is choosing to respond.
Sure. And I also do want to thank the person Catherine. Thank you so much for your share about your experience with me. It really warmed my heart and brought tears to my eyes, actually. But in terms of what we are still uncertain at this time, whether or not this protects us fully in terms of immunity. There are some people, now that this rapid antibody test is available, but it doesn't tell you the amount of, and antibodies our body has developed, because it's a process, it's developed the exact match that can connect to the virus and dissolve it within our bodies. So there are several people who have had the virus who will have this rapid test, and it does not show that they have long-term antibodies to it. What this means at this time, we don't know. However, the majority of people who do the rapid testing do demonstrate evidence of immunity. For how long they have immunity is kind of a race between how the virus itself mutates, because we all know, well, some of us know that the flu virus, for example, you can get a flu shot or flu vaccine, whatever your opinion on vaccines, but I'm just explaining the science behind it, and it have no impact whatsoever. And the reason why is because that virus has changed. It is mutated in its form so that the educated guess, the vaccine that they had attempted for that year, is no longer effective. The same thing can happen with coronavirus. And so we're really not 100% certain. Testing can give us some confirmation of immunity at that point in time. How long it lasts, no one really knows at this point in time.
Thanks, Andrée. My response is, if you do whatever you can to boost your own immunity, it immunizes you against so many, pretty much most diseases. And if you do the work of emotionally digesting any trauma or distress that you might have had in your life, it actually uplifts the ability of your organs to heal themselves. So as long as, you, and if you understand that fear is one of the biggest damager of immunity, followed very closely by conflict. If you address those two issues and do whatever you can in your power to keep uplifting your own vibrational frequency, you are protected pretty much against anything. And even if it does occur, like it did with Andrée, and you hear it when you take the time to listen to the long conversation that we had, the more she started going into herself, she was just making choices that were the best for her. She was honoring herself, her own worthiness. She was honoring that in her daughter and honoring the choices that she was making, rather than blaming things outside. And there were many things that led up to it. She could have spent a week blaming, and all that would have happened is fear would have gripped her even more, and it would have been even worse. And the fact remains, Catherine, and this is whoever's asked the question, the fact remains that vast majority of people recover from this. You know, the pandemic panic really is just having a rush into the hospitals for them to be able to cope or not cope. So let's use the fact that the pandemic viral spread energy is already anchored on the planet. Let's use that to spread the good vibe. You know, let's have that trust vibe spread. The divine is using it. Why don't we do that?
I love that perspective. We're during our time here. It's about 5 minutes till the end. So I would like to maybe have one more question. For those of you who need to go, feel free to. However, we are so blessed to have Mynoo take us through the end. Something that always a delight that you will definitely not want to miss. But if you need to drop off the call, feel free to. So I'm going to ask one more question. Those of you who asked questions we didn't get to this week, same place, time, 5:30 every Thursday. Please feel free to join and send me additional questions. So we'll just ask one more, and then Mynoo will take us through a process. Okay, so many people in different ways have asked, what are we to do now? What can we do? And how can we relate to those around us who aren't really understanding the bigger picture? They're just looking at this as just a virus and it's taking the world down. So what can we do ourselves, and how can we relate to others around us?
Yes. So what can you do yourself? First of all, this whole piece, oh, we've got this virus, it's taking the world down. I mean, lies. That's just a lie. Look at nature. There are more than enough photographs being shared around the world, from around the world, which proves that nature is reclaiming itself. This is a virus that is opening up our crown and literally uplifting the planet. When nature is coming forward in its full glory, reclaiming itself, showing that it can reclaim itself faster than humans can fix it, giving humans the vitality in the knowing that they don't have to go around fixing all this stuff or feel guilty what kind of a world we are leaving for our next generations. Nature's reclaiming itself, right? Just so that's the first piece to know. It's a virus that is actually activated a process which is one of completely reclaiming itself. Within days, we had those 60,000 turtles show up on the shores of Orissa in India, and these were extinct species, right? And a lot of blame was on, the ocean level on humans as predators, but also the ocean pH levels, all that stuff. I mean, these species are nearly extinct. Well, there were 60,000 of them. They didn't just grow overnight in 4 days, they were there. Something happened, the oceans still clean themselves. That's the impact this is having. So that's the one piece to know. What can you do? I feel that there are people here in India, daily wage workers, immigrant workers where offices were closed down, couldn't return back to work. They don't have the money to feed themselves. They fed themselves from what they earned each day, right? So, the way I'm choosing to work with it is, I'm actively promoting and supporting organizations that are making the food and that are making this available to them. And I've chosen to play my part by feeding the souls. Really bringing about that reconnection, food for the soul, through gatherings like this. The biggest gift that you can give at this time, wherever you are, really reconnect yourself to the trust frequency. Get into that unconditional acceptance of what is by being real. Your vibrational frequency uplifts. You start reclaiming yourself. The multiplied effect is huge. It's massive. We have that whole pandemic viral effect energy anchored on the planet. So each one of you that lifts your own frequency, don't push anything under the carpet. If you're fearful, notice that you're fearful. Acknowledge that. It's easier to unconditionally accept what is. And then look at what's there that is still making your heart sing. And that will multiply massively. Do whatever you can, in terms of online supporting organizations that are out there, serving people, doing something. So that's what I would like to say in response to that. There's another question about, how long is this going to last? When is this going to get over? When I track globally, already the grip of the downward spiral already is way, way, way lower than it was even last week. And you've heard me say this before. This came in, the divine took over. It's here for a very specific purpose, for the purposes of the rebirthing of our planet in such a way that it transforms itself, with the human species as one of the species that is an integral part and a co-creator of the resurgence of the planet in its new form. And that calls for humans to connect to the soul being that they are, expressing themselves in this human form. The moment we get that critical mass, it will be gone. And I've been given specific dates and stuff, so that this is not the forum right now to share it. Maybe next week we will have the time and we can talk about that. But just know the gripping hold that was pulling us down is already relented. So if the more of us that allow ourselves to rise, we will just literally take the planet with us. It's just waiting for humanity. The rest of nature has already reclaimed itself. We would normally ask you to share one word that you are present to complete this call. You can certainly put it in chat, and you can text message Catherine. Deeply grateful for you showing up. Receive whatever you have received. If certain things didn't make sense or it gave rise to 20 other questions, send us the questions. Putting the questions out in the vibe. If there are lots of questions, then I will just do a recording answering many of the questions. But just get present. Give yourself that present. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the week. And I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And we will have one last call with the Navigating the Unknown, which will be next week, and then we'll start a new series. So please join us, same place, same time. Invite your friends. It takes a little while for us to get you in, but we are so grateful to have you all here. What a blessing, Mynoo. Thank you again. And thank you, Dr. LeRoy. You really blessed us with your energy.
Yeah, deeply grateful. And I mean, such a winning combination, if there was one, right? An MD, a medical intuitive, and having gone through the COVID journey. That's what you can do, really share this. And we will certainly support you to share it as much as we can.
And Mynoo, tons and tons of gratitude. You guys can't see this that's coming through on the chat. We have it really directed just to us, but we just so appreciate you. We love you, and we can't wait to be with you next week. From Mary, love, gratitude. Tanya, love. Shauna, gratitude, warrior, peace, love. Nina, such peace. What a blessing. We'll take the questions, I think, all the way through to the end, and then you can stay for the process, which will take us a little bit later. I think that format tends to work for all. Vince, thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Okay.
So thank you all. We love you, and we look forward to having you next week. Vince, thank you so much. It was wonderful.